What's up guys, Bootleg Developer here, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make your very first Android app. For this video, we're going to be making a simple counter app that our lovely editor will hopefully superimpose right around here. Hopefully. And so let's begin. This is the start menu. I'm going to create a new project here. I'm just going to call it counter app. Company domain, you could usually just put your own name here. Click next. And this screen pretty much asks you what's the minimum version of Android you want your app to be able to run on. Right now, API 16 is Jelly Bean, and the most current version of Android is API 25, Android Nougat 7.1.1. And API 16 sounds pretty good for this, so we're just going to continue. Covers 95% of devices. This is asking you what activity do you want to start out with. And for you guys who don't know, activity is pretty much another word for page. That's the best way to think about it. So we're just going to start with an empty page here. Click next. This is going to be the name of the activity. We'll call it main activity. The layout to organize the UI of the activity is just going to be called activity main. And yeah, going to click finish and start building. And I'll come back to you guys when it's completed. So after the project is finished building, you will have a main_activity.java file and an activity_main.xml file. The Java file is obviously where all the Java goes, and XML is where you determine the UI of the app. And just in case you guys accidentally close these tabs, you can find it in this panel over here, project. Make sure this is set to Android. Under app, resources, and layout, that's where your XML files are. Or to access Java is under Java, this top one here, and main activity. So let's move back up. So now let's create the UI of the app. Starting off, Android automatically puts us in the constraint layout, which is fairly new, and it's meant to be used with the design editor. So we're going to switch over from text to design down here. Okay. I'm going to close this panel to give us some more room. So the goal of this app is to press one button up here to tick up the number in the center, and to click the bottom down here to tick down the number in the center. So we're missing two buttons here, so we're just going to go over to this panel called palette. It should be one of the first ones here called button, and we can just drag this onto the screen like so. And these guidelines will pop up to help you line it in the middle. Then we could drag another button for the bottom. Go. Okay. And for now, we can automatically have the constraints set up for this so that the buttons stay in place. By doing that, go up to here. You'll see this little symbol here. It's called Infer Constraints, and click on that. And the constraints will automatically be inferred. So now let's go back to the text editing over here. So you see here we have the text view, which is this in the center, the button, which is referring to this top button, and the bottom button here. Now let's change the text of the top and bottom buttons. You can see here there's an attribute under the buttons called text, and here we can change what it's called. So let's call this one plus. So when we click the button, we want this number to plus, and we'll call the bottom one minus. Now that we've changed the text of the buttons, we want something to happen when these buttons are pressed. We want this number in the center to be decreased and to be increased when we click the plus button. So to do that, under each button, we call on, click. You can press enter to autocorrect. And let's just call this minus button click. And now if you go over here, you'll see this little light bulb appear. And if we click on that, this should come up. Create minus button clicked view in main activity. Click on that, we have this public void appear. And you notice how this name is the same as this right here? Pretty much what this means is that when this button is clicked, it's going to call a method called minus button clicked, which is in the main activity right here. And let's do the same for the top button. So on click plus button click. Go to light bulb, and sometimes it may take a while for the automatic on click event to appear. And if it doesn't, make sure you just click out, click back in, and there we go. Sometimes it just takes a second. Okay. So now we have when the minus button is clicked, this is called, and when the plus button is clicked, this is called. So when this is called, we want an integer to be increased. But we have no integer to increase in the first place, so let's create that. Let's create int counter value, and let's set equal to 0. So when the minus button is clicked, we want the counter value equals, we just do minus minus, and this is shorthand for -1, and counter value plus plus, and this is also shorthand for +1. And now we have to figure out how we can get this number into this text view. To do that, we need to set an ID for the text view. What this does is it allows the Java class to communicate and locate an item in an XML file. So let me show you this. Well, first of all, let's get rid of this text and just set a 0 as default. And an ID here is already created, but in case if it's not created already, this is how you do it. Start typing ID, press enter for the autocorrect, press enter again to fill in this at plus ID, and what this means is create new ID, and let's call this counter view. Okay, so now we have a text view in the center that is created counter view. Now you see a problem happened because these buttons were constrained based on an ID called text view, but we changed the ID to counter view. So I'm just going to go through and change this back to counter view, and everything should be all fixed up. So now let's go back to the main activity. So what we want to do is we want to create an instance of this text view in the Java class. So let's go text view, and let's call this counter view. Okay, but right now we can't do anything with this because this text view is not associated with anything. So in the onCreate method, which is like an onRun method, we can call counter view. Counter view equals, go past and text view here, and we're going to type find view by ID r.id.counter view. Now what this means is, hey, I got a text view called counter view, and I want to set it to an ID. I want to set this to equal the text view with ID counter view. So if you see here, r.id.counterView matches the ID set to the text view over here. If this was a different name, you would have to change the name over here. So now all we have to do is change the text. And to do that, we can go over here and we can call counter view dot set text. And we can just call this string dot value of counter value. And if we go over here, oops, do the exact same thing, counter view set text string dot value of counter value. And that's pretty much it. Now, whenever a plus button is clicked, the plus button clicked method will be called, which over here increases the counter value and sets the text of the counter view to the value of the counter. And same thing happens with the minus button. So that's it for this tutorial, guys. Maybe at the very end I'll show off a link to the description. And that's pretty much the end of this tutorial. In less than 10 minutes, you create your very first Android app. My editor will pull up a video over here showing the app working on an actual phone. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. It really does help. And until next time, see you around.